Well, it's interesting because you're talking about the common folk, and the things that you just discussed will certainly impact their pensions. It will impact the market, which will have a trickle down effect. But really, the conversation at the kitchen table is obviously around inflation. And it's interesting because this is one of the things Kamala Harris is going to have to deal with. She cannot walk away from Bidenomics. She cannot walk away from the Biden administration, of which she served as vice president. But she's going to have to differentiate herself going into the fall, particularly on September 10th, which will be sort of the next big benchmark in this election, which is the one and only debate that's been agreed to. We saw her come out and introduce this concept of price controls, and it just got broadly panned across the board, across the spectrum. The Washington Post was vicious. And that was sort of her first foray into economic policy. And so she's really going to have to step up and do more than just sort of sing to the choir and trying to appeal to a populist base and talk about things like tax hikes and corporate tax increases, because it's not going to work across the board, and it's not going to speak to the number one economic issue that matters to voters in this election, which is inflation.
All right, cost of living, understood.
Lanhee, nationally, in the opinion polls, Harris-Walz have the edge, don't they? Can they keep and consolidate the lead that they have?
Well, I think nationally, yeah. If Kamala Harris wants to have any hope of winning the presidential election, she's going to have to win the national popular vote. And I think the national surveys will reflect that broadly. So I would expect her to remain in the lead for the balance of the campaign. Doesn't mean she's going to win the election. That's why we always encourage people to look at polls in the specific states that you noted earlier, whether it's Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan in the Midwest, or Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina in the so-called Sun Belt. Those are the states where you want to look at the survey research and see what that survey research is telling you. And frankly, right now, it's painting a very divided picture. I think that there are some states where Kamala Harris has been able to generate a lot more interest than Joe Biden did. And there's other states where she's running essentially even with Biden, or maybe even a touch behind, like Pennsylvania. So I think that it's really worth looking at those swing states and the pitch that the respective campaigns, the Harris-Walz campaign and the Trump-Vance campaign, are going to make to swing voters, to independent voters in these states. It is very much going to center on cost of living issues. So far, at least, the Harris-Walz ticket has presented a bunch of nonsensical ideas that will do nothing to address cost of living issues. So they're going to have to do something about that, I think. But this will be the core of the discussion as we go into the fall campaign in the last several weeks before the November election.